Hi, welcome to Healing the Trauma Within. In this session, I'm talking with Brooke Ann. We are going to be talking about turning trauma into treasure. Let me tell you about Brooke. She is the creatrix of art alchemy. She is a light leader, Kundalini instructor, and a multidimensional trauma coach. She loves supporting those on the front lines of mental health by providing additional education and a more holistic and energetic approach to trauma healing. She has extensively studied the four bodies: mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual, and how to move and reprocess feelings and limiting beliefs to restore the natural, healthy vibrations of the whole subtle body. She's a certified life coach and understands how the universal laws of creation work together to create perception in life. As the founder of Sacred Design, she is committed to helping others turn their trauma into treasure through the expansion of awareness, emotional transmutation, physical activation, and spiritual ascension. Welcome, Brooke.
Thank you.
Well,
Happy to
I'm
be here.
I'm excited to have you here. This is going to be a great topic because we don't think of our traumas as anything good. It's something bad that happened to us, and I I like to believe that there is a silver lining. You just have to kind of look for it. So let's talk about turning our traumas into treasure. Tell me a little bit more about what you mean by that.
Yes. So I agree with you that generally trauma is looked at as something negative, um, something devastating and tragic. And while I definitely agree that there are there are those experiences that definitely are, there's
Mhm.
there's also an opportunity when those things happen to that there's a gift in it, and it's just a matter of allowing our like there's I feel like there's a whole process um of being able to move through that with acceptance and compassion for ourselves and others, and that ultimately we can come to see that a specific experience or even secondhand trauma of being a loved one of someone that's experienced something traumatic, that it can actually become one of our greatest gifts. And that's what I've discovered in my own life and with my own traumatic things that have happened. And I definitely view those, it's been a process and it's taken time, but I see those events or those situations as my most cherished gifts and treasures.
Definitely, it takes time. It's not one of those things you come right out of trauma and say, "Oh, well, that was a blessing."
Yes.
It definitely takes time. And like you, I've seen with my past and my traumas, they have helped to shape me into who I am today, but they've also helped to shape my path into what I'm doing today.
Yeah.
And if it weren't for those traumas, if I hadn't gone through what I've been through, you and I wouldn't even be talking today, I'm sure.
Mhm. Yeah, I totally agree. I feel like the traumas, whether it's in a relationship or just something that happens in general, I feel like it does have the potential to bring out our gifts and the best pieces of ourselves. So then we can take that and share it with the world.
Absolutely. How do we go from, trauma into finding those gifts? How do we get out of that, I guess, survivor phase and into the retrospect?
Well, I like to think of it as first of all, I feel like the first step to anything that we want to move through is awareness, and awareness of what we have currently experienced, and which most people do have that surface level, like, this happened to me. But I feel like awareness can go deeper in what in being able to recognize what feelings. A lot of time there's a lot of suppression of feelings in our society. There's so many distractions that just allow us to put feelings on a shelf and 5 years, 10 years, when in reality it could have only taken 90 seconds to move through a feeling or a cluster of feelings. And so we I feel like the first step is being brave enough and having the support to really just expand the awareness of the feelings that have been trapped. Because I feel like trauma, the root definition is trapped fear in the body. And then, if you want to take it a step further, in the subtle body, which is more um, like energetic, spiritual kind of verbiage. But um, so when we allow ourselves to recognize that fear, that's the first step in allowing it to move and to transmute. Because I feel like if we don't get rid of our trauma, if we don't if we don't recognize it and become aware of it, then we transfer that pain and suffering onto other people, onto our children, onto our employees, onto our other family members, everybody. And so it's, it's nobody's fault that they experience trauma. At the same time, I feel like it's our responsibility to transmute it and to take that pain and those feelings and be able to move through them so that we can create healing instead. And so when we allow that feeling to take place and holding the space for those feelings, that's where I feel we is the transmutation happens, because feelings are neutral, I believe, and they only come to give us a gift. And they don't want to get trapped in our body. Anger, hate, fear, they really just want to come and give us their gift and then be gone and move on. But we're the ones that hold on to them and say, "No, I can't feel this." So we just trap it for years and years and years. And in the letting go and the releasing, we're able to free ourselves of the repercussions of holding on to those feelings. So I feel like awareness is definitely the first step in making of allowing trauma to become treasure. There's also and that also, I guess I did include in there the next step, which is, I like to call it alchemy, emotional alchemy of um, being able to hold space for those traumas and those feelings to be able to move beyond. And I really like to also, I feel like it's so important to get down to the core belief when it comes to trauma and really being able to make major paradigm shifts in our life. And there's several different ways that you can do that, but I feel like that's also another vital step in being able to the whole process of transmuting your trauma.
I love, excuse me, I love how you called trauma trapped fear. Um, that makes perfect sense. And I think we hold on to those emotions because they're uncomfortable
Hmm.
and they're uncomfortable to process.
Yes, they
And
can be very, very intense.
absolutely. Absolutely. Pain, fear, anger, all of those are, yeah, like you said, very intense. And so we tend to repress them and, kind of ignore them. But instead, they just sit and fester inside, um, kind of like a splinter festering to come out until they're released. And like you said, it usually ends up being projected onto those around us,
Yeah.
causing um, intergenerational trauma, causing trauma to our loved ones and our support. Um, so, you talked a bit about transmuting or transmutating our emotions, but let's get into that a little bit more. And how can we how can we really process those feelings and allow them to come out and come through, um, when we're still living in a state of, uh, I guess, trauma.
Yeah. Well, I love what you said just a bit ago because you I feel answered that question perfectly. Movement. I feel movement is so key in allowing our trauma to be released and transmuted. So there's four main bodies that we have. We have our physical body. Everybody knows about our physical body. And there's different ways that we can use our body to help move trauma. There's exercise and physical movement and yoga. Bessel van der Kolk, in his book, The Body Keeps the Score, he talks about yoga and similar things that are very good at releasing trauma. At the same time, we don't just have a physical body. We have an emotional body, a mental body, a spiritual body, and there's trauma that can get trapped in those layers as well. And so I feel like movement in all those aspects of ourselves is what is so important to be able to move through the trauma and to not have that stagnant energy just poisoning us and our life and those around us that we love. So, mental movement is what I started doing in my healing journey. And I feel like that's the journaling, that's the self-reflection, that's the really just getting curious and exploring the inner mind and the inner landscape. And then I feel like emotional movement is where creation is so powerful in being able to move the energy in the emotional body. And artwork is something that I use a lot for my own journey and in my practice. And I I feel like art is so effective at healing trauma, especially because it's nonverbal as opposed to, journaling or going to counseling, a traditional like cognitive therapy. When you're doing art, it it taps into those traumas that aren't connected to language, that usually childhood trauma, where when we experience something traumatic and we didn't have any language skills, we we're we put away that those emotions and that experience, and it can only be accessed non-verbally. So art is so effective at accessing those feelings and those childhood traumas so that they can finally come to the surface and be healed. And so I feel like music falls into that category. Anything that we can create intentionally with the purpose of, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to just trust in the process of what comes up, and I'm going to just, you know, experience creating and being with myself. So I also have developed a process of interpreting art as well and using that interpretation for direction. And also, I feel like creation and painting, the what we do create is a direct message from the subconscious mind. And that's where I really love to find limiting beliefs and be able to target them and then reprocess them and reprogram them. So I love doing that with art. And then with physical movement, we already talked about with the yoga, and I do Kundalini, light leader Kundalini yoga. And then with spiritual movement, I feel like meditation is such a powerful spiritual movement to really connect to the highest version of ourselves and whatever higher power that we feel called to, whether that's God or the universe or spirit or source, where we really can tap into that unlimited power of love and knowledge and just and direction. So I feel like all four of these types of movement are so vital to healing, to diagnosing and healing the whole parts of our being, our whole self. And if we focus on one and not the others, then I feel like there's still a disharmony and there still can be a lot of chaos that's being created. So I feel like it's important to be actively engaged in having that whole movement in order more to be able to move forward in a more balanced way and to feel more structured, like to feel more stable. That's the word I'm looking for. Emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, and really because trauma, it impacts every aspect of our life.
Mhm.
Our relationships, our bank account, our career, our health. And I really love Bessel van der Kolk's his all of his research that says that most all disease or illness or pain, if not all, is linked directly to trauma, whether that was experienced in our own life or we inherited it and through epigenetics and intergenerational trauma. So I feel like looking at life as a mirror and our relationships as a mirror and everything that's coming up in our awareness is a beautiful reflection of what we get to heal next and what is happening within us, as within so without. So that's how I like to view the just really diving into to being able to move through the traumas and the feelings.
I think you expressed it perfectly with all four of them. I love the art segment. I never really thought about that too much. Um, and for those of you who maybe aren't artists, because I'm sure there's some out there, they have those adult coloring books, and those are great too.
Mm-hmm.
Just something to get that segment of your mind and your body, working. Those
Yes, I
are
totally agree. Usually, I'm a professional artist, but when I do processing for healing and for my own or for clients, I usually draw stick figures. And I just, and colored pencils. I just love the
no,
simplicity. Yeah, I agree with you. It doesn't have to be anything fancy.
no,
It's not so it doesn't have to be aesthetically pleasing. It literally could be like a big black dot on your paper, and there's still something that you're going to discover about it that you need and that you can find beauty in.
absolutely. Absolutely. And journaling is one of my favorite tools that I recommend to people, getting it out, getting it on paper,
Yep,
not
I agree.
not repressing it, not keeping it inside. Because when we keep our trauma inside, like you said, like Bessel van der Kolk, he says that all our disease and illness can be traced back to trauma. And that's because we store it
Yes.
in our bodies
Mm-hmm.
and it becomes toxic, it becomes poison to us. And so then we end
Yep.
up with anti-inflammatory, autoimmune,
Yeah.
inflammation, cancer, you name it. So much of that.
Yes, I totally agree. And giving it a little different spin for anyone in your audience that's interested in energy, I feel like all emotions have a specific vibration.
Mhm,
And so do our organs, so does our body. And so when we get an emotion trapped in our heart that is vibrating at a different frequency than a healthy heart, then it starts to change the frequency of that healthy organ. And that's when there's the like disease and pain or sickness comes. And until we release that feeling, where it's just going to continue to manipulate. I don't want to, I guess manipulate's not the right word, but it's going to influence uh, for our body to not be in the optimal healthy vibration that it is. And until it's released, and then our bodies are just naturally good. Our bodies are self-healing. And so when we do release that feeling or the cluster of feelings, which I like to call limiting beliefs,
mhm.
they are able your our body is able to go back to its healthy vibration in the organs and to be able to function properly and to have the proper flow of energy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Brooke, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on and talking with us today about how to turn our traumas into treasures and how to release our emotions and all that pent up gunk that we keep within our four bodies. It's been fantastic.
You are welcome. Thank you so much. I've had lots of fun.
Well, good. Listeners, thank you for joining us in this session, and we'll talk to you in one of the next sessions.